Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good morning to you wherever you may be. Welcome to the BigSpeak Webinar. This is Virtual Visual Storytelling with Matthew Luhn. I'm Marianne Kuga, Marketing Manager at BigSpeak, and we are coming up on summer. And while summer might look a little different than summers past, I know we're all looking forward to a little more sunshine in our lives. Although it has been pretty sunny here in Santa Barbara for a while, and I'm definitely not complaining. At BigSpeak, we're excited to kick off the summer season of this series for all of you, our partners and friends, as we continue to shake things up. You needing an inspirational boost, we've got you covered. Looking to innovate, stay tuned. Feeling blue, say no more. This week and in the upcoming weeks, we're here to do our part in supporting your creative spark. And while we wait just for a few more folks to get signed in and situated, I'll take this time to say happy birthday to Julie Whalen, who's one of our BigSpeak team members. Julie, from all of us at BigSpeak, we wish you the happiest of birthdays and can't wait till we are all able to celebrate together. All right, it is time to welcome today's guest. He is a renowned storytelling expert who was one of the original story artists at Pixar, with credits including the Toy Story films, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, Cars, Monsters University, Ratatouille, Up, and just about any other movie that has ever made you cry. He was also an animator on The Simpsons when he was just 19 years old. He's currently writing and directing an animated short, and in his spare time, he helps businesses and brands harness the power of storytelling. Matthew Luhn, everybody, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Matthew, if you can get your video, there he is. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, Marianne. Hi, everybody out there. It's great to be here today.
How are you? How's it going? What have you been doing to stay sane?
I think I've been doing the same thing everybody else is doing, which is binge watching a lot of Netflix and Disney Plus. Thank God for stories, right? So, and then also, like Marianne mentioned, in between watching movies and spending time with my family and kids, I am managing to still work and direct.
That's awesome. How's homeschooling?
Oh gosh. Well, I do. I love my kids, so that's a bonus. I do like teaching, so that's good as well. But like most of us, it's become this real juggling act between being a full-time teacher now and also doing our jobs and keeping our sanity. But it has been a great time spending this time with my family and my kids.
Definitely. So before I let you get into your presentation, because I just gave everyone a glimpse of your resume, I do have a couple of questions. Like, for example, being an animator on The Simpsons at 19, I can remember myself at 19 and cannot imagine myself working on something as iconic as The Simpsons. So tell us just a little bit about that experience.
It was one of those things of being at the right place at the right time. And The Simpsons was only on the air for maybe 3 years. And I was at college. I was going to the California Institute of the Arts, which is the animation school that almost all of the directors at Pixar and Disney have gone to. And I happened to be the first student to get my short animated film done. This was my freshman year. And a director from The Simpsons came in looking for new employees because The Simpsons was doing so great. And he loved my short film. He offered me a job. I thought for maybe 1 second, boy, should I leave college to go take a job on The Simpsons? And yes, I left. So I ended up moving to Hollywood, and at 19 years old, I became the youngest animator on The Simpsons. I worked on the 3rd season, which is also, in my opinion, the best season of The Simpsons. But it was awesome. But something really magical happened while I was working at The Simpsons. I stumbled into the story room where the group of writers were each week writing the episodes. Everybody from Conan O'Brien to comic strip artists to Harvard graduates. And I fell in love with the story process. And at that point, I knew I wanted to get into the role of being a writer and a visual storyteller. And that I was fortunate enough to have that epiphany when I was pretty young in life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a glimpse at what the early days of Pixar looked at with like people like Steve Jobs roaming the halls.
Yeah, well, first off, for The Simpsons, there was, nobody's animating on computers. There's no cell phones. I'm just thinking for a minute. Yeah, there's no internet, okay? And I was animating on paper when I was at The Simpsons. Then when I transitioned over to getting a job at Pixar on Toy Story, yes, we just started using the internet. That was really the first time that there was ever a CG animated film, and I was part of the first 12 animators to learn how to translate 2D animation to CG animation in a computer. It was a challenge, but every day was exciting, and it was a new experience and a new discovery. And I'm very fortunate that I was a part of that early team at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, before we dive into this session, just a couple of quick logistical reminders for everyone. We are recording this, and we will be sending the recording out automatically tomorrow. You can also find the recording of this session and all our previous sessions on our website at bigspeak.com/webinar. The chat is open for all attendees to see, so when you're in the chat, make sure to click all panelists and attendees before typing your message. And we will be doing a Q&A after Matthew's presentation. And if you'd like to ask your question on video, please type it in the questions box and then use the raise your hand function to indicate that you'd like to be on video. If not, you can just ask your questions in the chat box or in the questions box, because I completely understand that some people might need a break from being on video. And if you do want to be on video, I'll be able to give you permission to turn on your video and unmute your microphone, which will show in the bottom left corner of your Zoom toolbar. All right, so let's get into why we are here today for virtual visual storytelling. We all know how important storytelling is for brands and businesses, and living in this more virtual world today, the visual storytelling is key. So Matthew.
Yeah. So I am excited to be able to share with all of you the things that I've picked up throughout the years, whether, like Marianne said, working at The Simpsons or working at Pixar for over 20 years, or the projects I'm working on now, directing and writing. And, I remember when I went to that art school, Cal Arts, the first thing my teacher, the dean of the school, said was, whatever you do in art, whether it's film, dance, music, whatever, make people feel something, evoke an emotion. And one of the best ways to evoke an emotion is through visual storytelling. Within the first 90 seconds, people make decisions based on visuals. Whether it's the main character on the movie screen, or you are ordering a product online or going into a store, let's say, for example, clothing detergent. Everything is pretty much priced the same, but why do you pick one product over another? Well, you usually pick it because of the visuals. Everything from, yes, the name of the brand, the name of the product, the color, the design. But within 90 seconds, we make a decision on whether or not we like the main character on the screen, we like the product. When I came in at the very beginning on Toy Story, and I got the pitch for what Toy Story was going to be about, I remember I was sitting in a room. There was only about 4 of us. There was Steve Jobs, there was the director of the film, there was the supervising animator, and then there was the screenwriter. And I remember when they gave me the pitch for the story, which was Toy Story, it was great. It was a 10-minute pitch. I was so moved. But one of the things I do remember standing out to me was the design for Woody at the time. Now, the design for Woody at the time was he was a ventriloquist doll, and he had those lines along his face. Definitely a very creepy design. That was probably the only feedback I gave at that meeting was, Woody looks really scary. But it's true. When you see a character on a screen or a person up on stage or a person delivering a pitch or presentation, within 90 seconds you make a decision of whether you like them or not. You know, this is something that's been going on for many, many years. Even when you go back to the very first photographs, like Abraham Lincoln, you know, this was one of the earliest photographs we have. And, you know, this photo really made the difference between Abraham Lincoln winning or losing the election against his opponent, Samuel Douglas. Now, it's interesting that the person who took the photo of Abraham Lincoln was the same person who took the photo of his opponent. But these two photos definitely tell a different story. You know, when this photo was taken, this was, you know, way, way back, the beginning of photography, they would really tell you not to move when you take your photo. They didn't want your face to be blurry. The lens would be, you know, the exposure would go for a long time. So one of the things they actually did was they put a clamp behind people's neck with a rod that went into the wall to keep them as still as possible. But when the first candidate came in to take their photo, the photographer set his camera up on a tripod. He told him, you know, come on in, set your hand down on this table, and he took the photo. And then he left, and Abraham Lincoln came in. Now, Abraham Lincoln was much taller than his opponent, so his hand didn't reach the table. So quickly the photographer, you know, improvised, grabbed some books, put them underneath his hand so he could rest his hand there. But it's interesting, these little things really make a difference because when you look at these photos, you start making these decisions like, are those books like maybe one of them's the Bible? Maybe Abraham Lincoln is like, you know, more of a religious guy or more about telling the truth. And then also you look at Abraham Lincoln and he looks very trim, like he hasn't been eating, you know, like at fancy restaurants or something. His outfit looks like a coat that most people would have during that time. Very, you know, very traditional long coat. And then you see his opponent. His opponent looks like he's a little more well-fed, looks like he has a fancy French coat. There's no Bible that's there on the table. And actually, it wasn't a Bible. It was just books that the photographer found in the room. And it's also interesting to see the staging that was happening. You know, when the photographer set up the camera on the tripod, it was set for Samuel Douglas. But when Abraham Lincoln came in, Abraham Lincoln was a little taller, it almost looked like a little bit of an upshot, you know, kind of a low angle. And whenever you have a low angle shot, it actually makes you look more like a hero. So when these two candidates went out and started, you know, campaigning, it wasn't like today. There was no cameras, no megaphones, no, you know, social media. What would happen is those guys would go up on a stage to hundreds of people and they would give a speech. And everybody had like a postcard of their photo and a little bit of their speech. Because as people got farther and farther away in the audience, they couldn't see Abraham Lincoln up on stage or Douglas. All they really had was that photo and a little bit of what he said. Actually, a little fun information was that a lot of times Abraham Lincoln and Douglas couldn't even be at their speeches because you know, you couldn't travel as easily. So they had an actor on stage looking like Abraham Lincoln, but everybody had that card with the photo. And when they saw that card, the visual story communicated to them Honest Abe and Angry Douglas. Because also the expressions on the two candidates looked very different. Abraham Lincoln looked very calm. He also was very still when the photograph was taken, so his face wasn't blurry. And Douglas, he had this like angry look on his face, and he moved a little bit, which made him a little blurry. So it's really interesting to see that a big part of why people voted for Lincoln was because of this photo. You know, 80% of our human experience is filtered through our eyes. Visual cues are vital to successfully getting a message across. So when you think about those images that you want to use, whether it's you behind a camera or advertising or social media, you really want to make sure that the images you're using are evoking an emotion. Just like my art teacher shared with me on my first day of school at Cal Arts. Images and art should make you feel something. They should make you feel happy, like a kid who got a brand new pair of shoes, or a mom that is definitely struggling. But whether it's a picture of a person or a product, visuals are 55% more memorable than text. So when you look at an image, what really sticks to you? Is it the information, the data, the statistics, the written information? No, it's going to be the visuals. The visuals tell a story that we instantly get, and they stick with us. So let me give you guys some extra tips to be able to plus your Zoom game, your Skype game, however you're communicating virtually right now. And one of the first things is staging. You know, I know that when I am directing an actor, or I am drawing a character or animating a character, if I want the character to look more heroic, I end up lowering the camera, just like the photographer accidentally did when he took the photo of Abraham Lincoln. Whenever you have that upshot, it makes you look more powerful. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've been told, you know, if I'm going to communicate, you know, over my camera in a virtual meeting, I should really get the camera to be directly on my eye line. Yes, that's good. But I would just lower it a little bit. Not enough that you're looking up your nostrils, right? But just a little bit to be able to enhance you coming off more powerful or more of a hero. And you can see this happen whenever you see advertisements, when you see photographers choosing to photograph people who are giving a pitch or a presentation, just lower the camera a little bit. The opposite of that would be a high camera angle. Now, if you accidentally have your computer or your camera too high, you know, you got a bunch of books under it, and it's looking down on you, it's actually going to make you come off as weak or short. I know when on Monsters University, whenever I wanted to have Mike Wazowski look short, I had a high camera angle looking down at him. I wanted Sully, the blue monster, to look tall. I did a low camera angle. But other than wanting to communicate someone is short or tall, psychologically, where the camera is placed, it makes you feel a certain way about the character on the screen, or if you are having a conversation virtually, it will make you look weak. So really try to not have that camera above your eye line, okay? You know, another thing I think about is the close-ups. In art, in film, in drawing, whenever I want to show extreme emotion, somebody crying, somebody furious, or getting a very subtle piece of acting, I will do a close-up or an extreme close-up. But you want to avoid this, definitely want to avoid this for a Zoom call, okay? This is going to create a lot of stress for whoever the viewer is. You don't want to have close-ups. Another thing I would watch out for is any diagonals. You know, when you're setting up your camera, your computer, really make sure it's level. Even the slightest being off just a little bit from level will come off as, yes, either being dynamic, because I always want to get diagonals whenever I want to have a moment visually that looks dynamic, or an advertisement. But a lot of times when you have a tilt, it makes people feel uneasy. Okay, really the term that will get used in film and cinematography is it's called the Dutch tilt. Whenever you want to have a character look like their life is out of balance, things are out of control, or something's about to happen that's going to be bad, you tilt the camera. Not something I think we want to communicate when we are having a virtual meeting. Another thing, and I know you're all going to start looking at your photo on your computer right now, your video on your computer of yourself. Avoid tangents, okay? Really look at everything from the ceiling lines to any objects behind you. Are they creating a tangent that is going to be awkward or potentially funny, and you don't want it to be funny? So you really want to think about how you can use your environment to communicate a point of interest. You know, this is something I focus on when I do storyboards. You know, those images, those visuals that help the director figure out how they're going to make the shots through the film. We usually draw it up on paper first. In those storyboards, one of the things we're always trying to do is we want the audience to focus on whatever is the point of interest. Like in this drawing here, you see these boys, you know, and they're swinging into a big pile of hay. But the character that the artist wants you to focus on is the boy that's holding the rope right now. How does he do that? Well, he makes sure that he focuses your point of interest by using what we call invisible lines that are in the environment around the character, in the composition. You know, another way to create a point of interest is using light and color and value. But you want to think about how to be able to create a point of interest, whether it's for you in a virtual meeting or even in an advertisement. How to be able to use, like this ad for Tiffany & Company, the street, the little kid that's walking, her eye line, to direct everything onto, yes, the couple, but also the product. So you want to think about what is the most important thing in your frame and how to be able to get people to focus on it. I think another great thing, and we all love this and we should really be thinking about this, is how to be able to use your environment to tell your story. You know, what is important to you? What do you think helps tell your story and also that story for that meeting you may be in? So think about what's in the background. Think about what will help tell the story that's currently happening. Hopefully, when you go back and you look at yourself now in your camera, okay, and you're looking for some of those tips. Are you too close? What are the objects behind you? Hopefully, this is just going to plus your game and make your presence virtually be more pleasing for the viewer and be able to evoke the right emotion that you want them to have. You know, the other thing I think about when I'm creating something visually is the color. Color makes us feel something. You know, color definitely evokes an emotion. And actually 62 to 90% of our visual decision making is based on color alone. The color of a product. I even think about Woody's outfit, Woody the cowboy from Toy Story, that yellow, that red, that blue. You know, those are those colors that get used for kids products and things that are kids related a lot. That red, yellow, and blue. Even the Toy Story logo has that color scheme. But whenever I'm making a film, I'm thinking about how the color is going to make people feel. You know, if I want to create a scene that's like a horror scene, something more scary, something that is low contrast, I end up going for like a dark, dark blue, right? If I want to create a moment that is more about love or maybe something that is a more angrier moment, I'll go for reds. So colors evoke an emotion. And when you think about all of those logos out there and all those brands and the colors they chose, right? I mean, there's really no accident. You see that blue there is, a lighter blue, not a horror blue. The lighter blue is one that communicates trust and strength. And you look at a lot of those logos, like LinkedIn and Twitter and the blue color I'm using on my screen. Color evokes an emotion. To keep it really simple, this is what I think about before I'm going to end up creating a presentation, sharing a presentation, doing a piece of art, or thinking about the color in a shot in a film. I'm making sure that the color is evoking the right emotion. Red, exciting. Orange, friendly. This is good. I have an orange vehicle. I feel it's friendly. Yellow is very optimistic, happy. Green is peaceful. Blue is dependable, trustworthy. Purple's creative, and gray is calm. So you really want to think about how your colors can evoke the emotion that you want people to have, And so when you're thinking about the color that's behind you in a meeting, a virtual meeting, think about the colors and think about how they're going to evoke the way people feel. Another thing I think about is how saturated or unsaturated the colors are. When you have a more saturated blue, yes, it feels trustworthy, it feels dependable. When it's more low saturated, then it comes off being a little more moody. But we can really see how color saturation makes us feel a certain way about a character, right, on a screen, or a character in a virtual meeting. I loved how in the TV show Breaking Bad, to be able to show the transformation of Walter White, going from having more of a more happy life to where he ended up, the saturation of the color changed from beginning to end. It was very subtle, right? And a lot of the viewers may not have noticed it, but it definitely, in a subliminal way, made people feel the change through the color. Whenever I want to have a moment in a story visually that feels positive and happy, like those moments in La La Land where we're in love, or all the people dancing on the cars in the very beginning, and we're all, the future looks bright, we're going to become Hollywood stars. Lots of saturated colors, because you want people to feel positive and happy. When you look at Monsters University and you see Mike Wazowski coming to the Monsters University campus, he's just got accepted. We used high saturated colors. It felt happy, it felt positive. Think about that when you are creating your ads. When you're thinking about the visuals behind you, you want to make sure that if you want to come off as being giving people a positive, creative feeling, you want to go for high saturation. But if you want to have a mood that is more somber, then you want to use neutral colors. You want to lower the saturation. Now, there are times where you're going to want to use this, especially in social media and advertising, because when you lower the saturation, it actually makes us have empathy for the characters. Not just that we feel sad for them, not just that we feel sympathy for them, but we can have empathy for them, which is really putting yourself in their shoes. Not just going, wow, I feel really bad for that person, but wow, what if that happened to me? That would be awful. So lowering the saturation, having colors that are more neutral, you are able to have people have empathy if that is the emotion you want to evoke for them. I think about the movie Up, and I don't want to bring back any bad feelings because I know the beginning of the movie Up was definitely a tearjerker. But when you see the main character in Up, Carl Fredricksen, and he has fallen in love, right? They want to get married, they want to have kids. The colors that were used at the beginning of the movie Up were high saturated. They were bright, they were colorful, and that made the audience feel really good and positive. If you haven't seen the movie Up, it's too late. It came out a long time ago. And then at the end, I'm giving you this as a spoiler alert, Carl Fredricksen's wife passes away, okay? Spoiler alert, okay. But after she passes away, all of the saturated colors in the movie Up disappear. You will not see any more saturated colors, no more bright colors. Everything goes to very muted, somber colors because we wanted you to feel not just through the acting, the visual acting through the character, but through the color and the lighting that things were very somber in his life now. At the end of the film, when things start to become positive again and he chooses to want to live again, then we see the colors start to enter his life again. We see his cheeks go from being very pale and gray to having color in his cheeks. So if you have some time today, go watch the movie Up, okay? And look for that visual transformation. And this visual transformation is not something that you just use for film. You can use color and high saturation and low saturation in an advertisement to communicate a transformation. Like in these Procter & Gamble ads, you can see that the high saturated image is the one where it's positive. I'm with my family, I'm having fun, I feel healthy. The low saturated moment, where the colors were more somber also, that's when the person's sick. So basically in one image, they're communicating to you a before and after through color, through visuals. Very powerful. I also want to share with you the power of using lighting in visual storytelling. You know, for all of us, you know, we're right now looking in our computer or on our little camera attached to our computer, and you want to think about the lighting that you're using, especially if you're going to be the one presenting or speaking or being seen during a meeting. And really, the simplest way to think about it is having three-point lighting, okay? Making sure that you have a key light source. Now, actually, my key light source is over here. Oh, wait, is it? Wait, yes, I think it's over here. So the key lighting can be anything from lighting that's coming from a window, okay? Or it could be a light you're using. But if you just use a key lighting, the other side of your face is going to be really dark, okay? You do want to have some fill light. Not as strong as your key light, but just enough to be able to not make it look like you are in a horror film, okay? And then, if you have the time, to have a light that is maybe a little bit above you, going down, that creates just a little bit of rim light, all right? Now, I know that's a lot to ask for, but really, just setting up a couple of those Luxo-looking lamps, okay, and using some natural light as a key light will really improve the lighting when you're on a virtual call. You know, I think all of us know that we want to come out being as, looking as good as possible. So thinking about soft film lighting, right? That's going to remove a lot of the creases, a lot of that sharp, specific detail on our face. So soft film lighting is a great way to go, or high key film lighting, okay? Whenever I'm thinking about those high saturated moments in stories where I want people to be really happy, I go for high key lighting, okay? Now, if you want to be outside, you can even use natural film lighting. Now, my suggestion is, and I know we can't control when we have our virtual meetings, but if you were going to do a picture presentation, really the lighting that's the best outside is the beginning of the day and the end of the day, right? We usually call it the golden hour, when the sun has risen and it's just come up, or in that last hour of the day when the sun is going down. That is when the lighting is perfect. Probably the worst time of the day to be outside with lighting is when the sun or light source is right above you, casting these really hard shadows on your face. You want to avoid that, all right? You can also just use practical set lighting, you know, really how the lighting works. Like when I'm putting together a shot, the light really is coming from those lights hanging above the tables, right? Or some of the light that's coming from the counter where the waiter or waitress is. but I would really try to avoid, especially for virtual meetings, any kind of diffused overhead lighting. This is really great when you want to create a very serious or intimate part in a film. But whenever the light starts going down, that's going to create some intensity. And it's not what you want to be going for. It looks great in a movie when, you're wanting to end up having a very, intense or even scary moment. But I don't think this is how we want to come off when we are in a Zoom or Skype meeting or Blue Jean meeting, right? You don't want to end up looking like Jack Nicholson from The Shining. So really think about the lighting that you're choosing. Here's a couple of options, right? Do you want to look like you're in, a store with fluorescent lights coming down on you, having that kind of blue tint on your face? Do you want to have those hard shadows on your face because you have really just one light source that's above you? I think most of us would agree that the image that's well lit, while it is still kind of flat, is the best lighting. Really think about the lighting to be able to think about how you want to evoke a reaction from whoever the viewer is going to be. The next one is facial and body expressions. Working on The Simpsons at 19 was awesome. But I tell you, the biggest challenge, which I discovered, was that everybody has to draw the character on model. So everybody at the studio, who was an animator like me, you were given a model sheet. Here's the model sheet for Homer. Now, the reason why we were handed this model sheet is because we were supposed to make sure that everybody in the studio drew Homer exactly the same. You didn't want him with too much hair. You didn't want him with the wrong, overbite lip. You wanted him to be on model. But the other reason why we got the model sheet was to be able to show us how the character, like Homer, would look with different expressions. One of the tools we have in visual storytelling to be able to evoke an emotion is through expressions, right? Now, I remember on Toy Story, when we were first trying to translate how to make 2D animation work in CG animation, it was difficult. But one of the things that we found was that we could make very subtle movements to the pupils in the eyes or to the mouth that you could have never done on paper in 2D animation. So those little subtle movements of a pupil that really got us thinking, how do people's eyes really move? The pupils. And we actually brought in a psychologist, and Paul Ekman, who had studied pupil movement for people all around the world. Why do people look up or to the side or down? And as he collected all of his data, he saw that, whenever people are trying to remember something visually, like what your first car looked like, we look up. Our pupils look up. It's universal. Whenever we're trying to remember what something sounded like your mother's voice, we look to the side. And whenever we're trying to remember what something felt like what your toes feel like when you're at the beach and the sand is on them, you look down. It's a very interesting thing. So with that data, we were able to go back in, and when we animated characters like Woody, we were able to really look at the dialogue on the script and say, what's he feeling right now? What's he thinking right now? Well, if he's thinking about what something felt like, we're going to have him look to the ground. If we're going to make him think about a memory that him and his owner Andy had, we'll have him look up. But if we ever wanted to have a character lying, we would end up having the character look the other direction. So whenever you're remembering something that's real, you'll look up to the left. Whenever you're remembering something you heard and it's real, this way. But whenever you're making something up, lying, you look this way. When you're visually remembering it, remembering the sound or what it felt like. Please don't use this against your loved ones, okay? But I'm just letting you know that these little visual things, they actually help us when we're watching a movie or we're watching somebody speak to us. we pick up on these little things, even if we have never heard about that data that's been collected on eye movement. But I think we know that our facial expressions, the eyes are the windows to the soul, they really make us feel a certain way, either positive, creative, or uncomfortable and agitated. So you really want to think about those expressions on your face, how they're making you feel. You know, on Inside Out, we figured out that, well, we didn't figure out, after studying tons of data, that there are 7 universal emotions that all people share in common. We had to narrow it down more, but there were 7 emotions that everyone shares in common. So you really want to, take a look at this and say, what one do I want to come off as when I am in a virtual meeting? Another thing I think we all know is body language. You know, how we end up portraying ourselves. Talking about Abraham Lincoln and Douglas in their campaigns. And then I think about Nixon and JFK, when now we move from just not a photo, but also being able to film and televise that debate. You know, if you haven't heard about this, you should look at it. You know, Nixon was sweating through the whole thing, right? He was touching his face a lot. And whenever you have a character touch their face a lot in a film, whether it's live action or animation, it makes them look uneasy or nervous. And then JFK, he was probably, just went out and got a tan and was on a boat or something the day before. I don't know, but he was very calm. He wasn't sweating or nervous, right? So you really want to think about your body language. Some little helpful hints. Don't bite your nails, right? Don't play with your hair. Don't nod too often. Don't touch your face. You know, we're not even supposed to touch our face anyway during this time, right? And don't bounce around. I've done this myself. When I'm in a meeting, I find myself sometimes having my hand on the computer or the floor, and I'm kind of moving, and then the camera is moving. So really think about how you want to come off. Like I mentioned, getting that Homer Simpson model sheet with the facial expressions, the next most important thing as an animator is the body expressions. You know, how your body is acting, and that pantomime communicates to the audience what you want the character to feel. It evokes an emotion. And so when I'm thinking about characters, and I think I want a character that looks positive and happy and open, I usually try to have hands out. I think we know that when you're not open, you kind of cross your arms. That's kind of that way to communicate, stay away from me, right? So you really want to think about how you want to come off when you are simply sitting in a virtual meeting. Do you want to come off with a closed attitude, or do you want to have a welcoming attitude? Just a couple things to think about, And even if your hand does go to your face, all right? Maybe you're just a person that just, you have that tendency. Really try to stay away from that, I'm a college kid who's bored, or a high school student that's bored, to somebody that's interested. At least, get your finger up if you have to put your hand on your face, okay? But these tips, everything from the color you choose, the lighting, the staging, the facial and the body languages, is just going to be a way for you to be able to plus what you're doing. I don't know when we're going to go back to being in person with one another and being live on a stage, but for now, it's going to be virtual. You really want to think about how you want to make your viewers feel, what kind of emotions you want to evoke. And I think Walt Disney said it best when he said, of all of our inventions for mass communications, pictures still speak the most universally understood language. And I think that's a really good thing for us to think about as we move into this next stage.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. And of course, now I'm looking up, and I swear I'm not being evasive. I just had my Zoom on a higher monitor, so I was looking up into
No
the
problem.
sky. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. That was awesome. And
My
we
pleasure.
did have a few questions that came in. Um, so first, starting with one from Michelle, and she wanted to know if there was a way to do soft film or the kind of natural film lighting in your house and in front of your laptop.
Yeah. You know what I would really suggest is just being in a location where you have a window. Okay. My uncle, a professional photographer, he gave me this tip, and he basically said, anytime you want to have some just very easy natural lighting, be next to a window. You don't need to show the window, but the light that will be coming through the window will already be diffused and it will feel natural. It's such an easy trick. And you can test this out by simply getting someone to take a photograph of you and try it next to a window with that diffused light. It'll give your face more volume, where you have a little more light on one side and a little more of less light on the other side. But really, that is the easiest solution for us that can't, that we're not cinematographers or professional photographers. Just get by the side of a window and have that light, diffused light, shine on the side of your face.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I wish we had had this conversation when we first started this webinar. I think my first session, I had like a fluorescent light right above my head. So that would have been.
Yeah, no, that's if you want to go for that
happened.
Jack Nicholson shining look, which I don't think we want to have right now. I wouldn't even suggest anybody watching that movie as we're all on lockdown right now. Not a good movie to watch right now, okay?
And you're in a studio right now. Someone was asking about the light you're lighting now and what your background is.
Yeah, so, we do have a background that's on rollers. I thought I should up my game a little bit, so have a nice background. But same thing, there's about 3 lights in here to be able to, like I showed in that photo of the movie Amelie, trying to have 3 sources of light: a key light, a fill light, and a rim light. So I'm doing it with, and also, like most of us, there's a lot of noise in my house with my wonderful children and the next door neighbors mowing the lawn. So I opted for coming here today.
Mm-hmm. And then a question about color. What colors work best to be on air?
What I would say is color. This is one of the things I learned when I was in art school and working on films. Color is personal. Okay. The reason why I purchased an orange Jeep was because when I was a kid, I had an orange Jeep, an orange Fisher-Price Jeep. So color is personal. We choose color because it means something to us personally. But also there's certain colors that, if you've lived with yourself long enough, work for you or don't work for you. For me, a yellow shirt doesn't work for me. I've tried. I also know that, for me, blue usually works out pretty nice. Like I mentioned, from those colors that evoke emotions, I picked this gray background because it's calm. A little bit of blue to be able to, I'm telling you all my secrets right now, but to be able to create a little bit of, hey, he's a dependable guy. The information he's giving us is dependable. But color is personal, and you really want to think about your own personality. How do you or people see you? Do they see you as a very vibrant person? Then I would really go for vibrant colors. My wife has blonde hair, and she usually ends up leaning towards colors that are a little more high saturated. She does well with those. And she also has that kind of personality. So color is personal, but I would really look at also that color chart I gave you and think about what kind of feeling you want to evoke in that next virtual presentation or virtual meeting you're going to have.
Mm-hmm. So this actually was a great question that came in, and if I pronounced your name wrong, I apologize. I think it's from Ariel. In my role, we support leaders who are often on video, especially now. What advice do you have for us to frame these same visual tips to our company leaders without seeming too critical or personal?
Well, you could always say, hey, I got these tips from this guy who actually works on movies. You could go that way. But I think all of us have learned that there is an art to giving good feedback, right? Whenever you're critical with somebody, they get defensive. It's just part of the way we are. So I would really think about how to be able to phrase it in a way of, this could plus your visual presence, right? This could highlight, your wonderful hair, or your beautiful skin tone, So I would really think about how to be able to share some of these tips in a positive way. Because you're absolutely right. You don't want to come off as somebody who is killing creativity or being threatening. And there is really an art of feedback, which is a whole nother keynote in itself. But it's about being honest, using candor, though, where you're being kind as well.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to do one more question here, and this one actually was sent in ahead of time. And it's, how can we use visuals differently to evoke emotion when we're unable to see clear facial expressions or be able to hear people clearly as we are on video right now?
Well, that is tricky. Because I give plenty of virtual keynotes now, and I won't lie. When I did the first one, it's a little challenging. I mean, I know most people hate being in front of an audience, but I actually love it. There's a lot of energy you get from the audience when you see them laugh, when you see them have that aha moment. It just fuels me, and it gets me more excited. But, some of the things that I've done, I know this sounds silly, is I've even taken some of my kids' toys, right? Their Woody doll, a Barbie doll, and I've set it up beyond the camera, just up on a bed, like they're looking at me. They're my audience, and that helps, because I think there's something about us when we're delivering a presentation where we can't see anybody, or we're in a virtual meeting and we can't see anybody. It gets a little hard because the way it usually works is when you're talking to somebody, you see their face, and then you react to how their facial expressions and their body language. So I think one of those tricks I do is, yes, setting up some elements, for me, toys. I have a lot of toys. Another way to do it is ask for somebody that you like to join the meeting, so they're on it, okay? And even though you can't see them, you know what their face looks like, and just imagine them just loving everything you're saying, okay? As a writer, I have to do the same thing. I have to think about, as I'm writing a script, and I don't have people reacting immediately to it, I have to think, how is the audience going to react to that script? And one of the things that Stephen King does is, and a lot of writers, is they always imagine they're writing for a particular person. Stephen King, whenever he writes, he's always writing for his wife, okay? He always has his wife in mind when he's writing. Is this going to scare her? Is this going to make her laugh? So he is imagining what her reaction will be, and I do the same thing. I think about the reaction of that person that's in that I'm thinking about when I'm writing the script, or I'm doing a presentation in front of a camera and I can't see the person. So those are some of the techniques that I use, some of the tricks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We are going to have to stop here. We're just coming up on the top of the hour. But if you have any further questions for Matthew or me or anyone on the BigSpeak team, please reach out. My email is on all the webinar materials. We do record every session and it will be automatically shared with all of you as well as all of those who registered and were unable to attend. Next on the BigSpeak webinar, we're going to be starting a mashup series, which will start on Wednesday, June 10th. And we'll be hosting conversations with multiple speakers from a variety of backgrounds and topics. And we will be broadcasting every other week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific. So coming up on June 10th, we have innovation expert Lisa Bodell and Iron Cowboy James Lawrence. On June 24th, we have best-selling author of Molly's Game, Molly Bloom, and former FBI hostage negotiator Christopher Voss. And on July 8th, we have the founder and CEO of the Seven Virtues Peace Perfumes, Barb Stegman, and retired Brigadier General Thomas Kolditz. Those registrations will be open tomorrow at bigspeak.com/webinar. Matthew, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. It was great to see everybody. Keep safe, and I hope to see all of you soon, whether it's live or if it's virtual.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone out there. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks. All right. Bye, everyone.